Okay, good afternoon. This is Chapter 16, Lecture A. We will get into early American history, the Gilded Age, here for American history since 1865. Important note as you're following along on Chapter 16, Presentation, Unit 1. Not everything we talk about will always be on the PowerPoint. Focus questions for this chapter. What factors combined to make the United States a mature industrial society after the Civil War? How was the West transformed economically and socially in this period? What was the Gilded Age? Political system, was it effective in its meeting its goals? How did the economic development of the Gilded Age affect American freedom? And how did the reformers in this period approach the problems of industrial society? Okay, so the Second Industrial Revolution 1. Between the end of the Civil War and the early 20th century, the United States underwent one of the most rapid and profound economic revolutions any country's ever experienced. Between the Civil War and the early 20th century, you're literally going to go from a rural agricultural society to we are starting to build skyscrapers. We have the invention of the airplane, the invention or basically the mass production, modernization of the automobile, mass transit, railroad, subways. You have a crazy expansion in this country as far as technological and where we are societally. We will enact high tariffs to promote American-made goods. We granted land to railroad companies to encourage construction, and you're going to see the first massive boom in this country dealing with the railroads. It's a boom and bust because it does fall apart, but you'll see that first big endeavor there. Okay, the Second Industrial Revolution 2, the industrial economy. Rapid expansion of factory productions, mining, railroad construction, all parts of the country except the South, signaled the transition from a Lincoln's America to a more mature industrial society. The South will linger behind. They will change, but much more at a much more slower pace. They will still be caught up in that antebellum pre-Civil War mentality for a long time. By 1913, the United States produced 1/3 of the world's industrial output. We will go from being one of them to we are the biggest producer in the world. We will surpass the British, which was the standard bearer for the time. Traditional dream of economic independence seemed dead. 2/3 of Americans worked for wages. Between 1870 and 1920, 11 million moved from the farm to the city and were dependent upon big industry, and they were working hourly jobs, dependent from paycheck to paycheck. The Second Industrial Revolution around the Great Lakes will occur during this period as well. And you're going to see the transformation in cities such as Chicago, Detroit, and others that you're going to start to see to develop in this second industrial age, more geared towards iron, steel, moving towards modern things that you would think of as electricity later on, and oil. The railroads in the national market. Railroads of the way tripled between 1860 and 1880, recognized or reorganized into 4 time zones. The crazy thing is the railroads is what creates the time zone as we know it today. You know, we have Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific, and then Pacific. That was all a product of the railroads, because they had to figure out a way to sell tickets and get when these trains would be arriving where. Okay, next slide. Second Industrial Revolution, number 3. The spirit of innovation. The opening of the Atlantic cable in 1866 will connect Europe and America with the idea that we could send information quickly. Telephone, typewriter, and handheld camera will be invented as well in this spirit of innovation period, thanks to people such as Thomas Edison, though he's not necessarily a great inventor, he's more of a stealer in improving. The phonograph, light bulb, improvement motion picture system for generating industrial and urban growth. Biggest thing that probably Edison does, besides the iridescent light bulb, is the creation of power grids and the introduction of power. So during this period of growth and this second industrial revolution, you're going to have power brought to parts of the country, and it's going to be revolutionary and obviously transforming a lot. And I want to come back to the Atlantic cable because now, instead of taking weeks or months for information to come from Europe, it can be now sent instantly so we can have updates what's going on in each continent. Competition and consolidation. Economic growth was dramatic but highly volatile. Business engaged in ruthless competition. Sometimes we call them almost business fights. They will form pools or trusts, legal devices whereby the affairs of several companies were managed by a few people or a single director. And what you're going to see is people are going to get a taste of wealth for money and they're going to want more. Americans, anybody, you get them some money, they get success, they're greedy, they want more. And this is very much the motto of this period. Giant corporations such as U.S. Steel under J.P. Morgan, Standard Oil, International Harvester, and before U.S. Steel under J.P. Morgan, you had Carnegie Steel under Carnegie. You're going to have people that are going to just want to consolidate large industries to be the sole producer of it. Today, that is illegal because of obviously monopoly laws and stuff, but in this period, it was not. Second Industrial Revolution, number 4. The rise of Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was the era of no personal or corporate income taxes, so you didn't pay taxes on your personal income. So people could get crazy rich. Andrew Carnegie set out to incorporate vertical integration. He was an immigrant, comes in, realizes I can integrate my whole corporation and own all productions or levels of production dealing with steel. Most advanced complex of steel was the Homestead, and he's going to make his name by producing and selling steel. Now, if you've watched the How the Men Built America series and such, which I don't think we get to in the series, the one I got for the reaction quiz for this chapter, what you see is Carnegie is a self-made man. He rises up. He is a product of a railroad guy who struggles. He does build the first bridge across I believe, the Mississippi River to connect St. Louis and Illinois. What you see, though, is Andrew Carnegie take risk. He's also going to realize I need to run stuff efficiently, and I'm going to cut corners at times to make as much money as possible. However, Carnegie, though he was wanting the thirst for more money, will give a lot of his money back to various groups. Public libraries is a big thing. He gives money back. Carnegie also creates Carnegie Hall in New York City, the music hall. But he would work his plans to death. So Carnegie did some good things, but he also, at the end of the day, was an entrepreneur that wanted to maximize profit. So that's going to lead to the second guy, John D. Rockefeller, a rival to Carnegie, not in the same field. Rockefeller rose to dominate the oil industry. He started out with like lamp oil, whale oils, and then he'll go over to the more specific or more broad, where we get into like oil for like, petroleum, and later uses for that with like cars and such. Rockefeller believed more in horizontal expansion. You own all production, or you own all companies in your field. So thus case, he wanted to own all the oil companies in America. He also believed in vertical integration as well, where you own every level of production from the creation, the movement of it, and the selling of it. So you own every single level of production. He is wanting to dominate everything. By the 1880s, he controlled 90% of the nation's oil market, which is incredible. Today, we have a law that in the United States, you cannot control more than 80%, 81%, because you would then be considered a monopoly, and it drives down competition, which is not good. Now, Carnegie and Rockefeller are the pinnacle too when you talk about this Gilded Age, Second Industrial Revolution, and these massive big business. Now, where's workers' freedom in this fit in? Well, kind of cramped in there. You're going to see economic growth distributed very unevenly. The workers will be the movers and shakers, but they really don't make a lot of money. And this is where you're going to have the rise of like Karl Marx and others who say there's going to be a revolt and everything, which is some truth, but there's going to be changes that we'll get to later that kind of keep that stuff from happening. Between 1880 and 1900, an average of 35,000 workers perished each year in accidents. That's incredible. That is like a small town city, or a big town, small city being wiped out every single year. Atchison County's population is around 5,000 people. That's like Atchison County 7 times over being wiped out each year. That's incredible. The rich lived in these mansions. They bring stuff from Europe. They were living in these crazy fetishes of such things, such as exotic animals, plants, furs, you name it, they'd lived it. But then at the end of the day, the people that were building this wealth, they were dying. I mean, you went to work, your hand got cut off. Today, you get workman's comp, all this. Then you went back to work the next day with your nub wrapped up, and you worked as hard as you could, because you might lose your job because you're not an effective worker. which leads to the richest 1% of Americans receive the same total of income as the bottom half, meaning 1% dominated 99% of the income in the country. That's incredible statistics. So, this is the first lecture in this chapter 16, so you can see the Gilded Age. If you look in the PowerPoint, this next slide, it shows you a picture on the left, Andrew Carnegie, top right, J.P. Morgan, who actually buys out Carnegie and creates the biggest, what's called U.S. Steel later on, and then Rockefeller in the bottom right. These three men really transform America, and we'll keep going through this in the Gilded Age. But tomorrow, we'll get into the transformation of the West and the politics of the Gilded Age. This is kind of setting the motion of what's going to create modern America. Have a great day.